An office supply company sells two types of notebook laptops. They charge $150 for one of the machines and $225 for the other. If the company sold 22 notebooks for a total of $3,900 last month, how many of each type were sold? Now, at first glance, when you look at this problem, it doesn't seem like there is enough information for you to solve it. But here's what I want you to think of. We're actually talking about two different things here. We are talking about how much each laptop costs. One of them is $150, the other is $225, and we sold a total of $3,900 for the month. And the other thing we're talking about is the type of notebook laptops. Okay, one type sells for $150, the other sells for $225, and we sold a total of 22 notebooks. So there actually are two things going on here. Let's think of it this way. I am going to call X, I'm going to label that as the notebooks that cost $150. And I'm going to label Y as the notebooks, and I apologize for my sloppy writing, that cost $225. So what this tells me is that I sold a certain number of notebooks costing $150, and then I also sold some notebooks costing $225, and altogether that's 22 of them. Now let's think of it in terms of money. I know that I sold X number of notebooks for $150. Okay. So I'm thinking of money. The amount of money I'd make by that is going 150 times the number I sold. Plus, each one of these is costing me $225. So the total amount of money I'd make would be $225 times Y. And altogether, I sold $3,900. This is how you come up with your linear system. So when you're given a real life situation and you have to solve it and it doesn't seem quite like you have enough information, keep in mind just assign some variables to what's going on. $150 machines, I'm going to call those X. The $225 machines, I'm going to call those Y. If I know I sold 22 of them, that means however many of the X's and however many of the Y machines altogether equals 22. And then think of it in terms of money. Each one of these machines cost me $150. Each one of these machines cost me $225. And altogether, in this case, we sold $3,900. So that's how we set up the system. Now, if we want to solve the system, again, in this case, I would first think of linear substitution because very easily here can solve for X or Y. So let's do that first. I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to pick a variable to solve for. I want to solve for X. Could I solve for Y? Absolutely, but I'll just pick X. And so X is going to equal 22 minus Y. Now what we can do with that then, once we know that's what X is equal to, is take this and plug it in here for X. So, let me get a different color. That means I have 150 times what my X is, 22 minus Y, plus 225 times Y equals 3,900. Again, the reason for linear substitution is now you're only dealing with one variable. Now you do have to use your distributive property here. So if you go 150 times 22, you get 3,300 minus 150 times Y, which is 150Y. Feel free to go change, and make that plus and negative. And that probably in this case is a good idea. So I'll do that here in 1 second. Combining our like terms, you take a negative 150 plus 225 we end up with 75y. And now we can solve for y. If you subtract our 3,300 here, that gives us 600. And if you take 600 and divide it by 75, you get 8. So this tells us, remember, that our y equals the number of $225 notebooks. We sold 8 of them. But go back and answer the question being asked. It wants to know how many of each type. Okay, shouldn't be too difficult to figure out because we know y is 8. Plug it in here for y. So this is x plus 8 equals 22. And if you just subtract 8 from each side, you get x equals 14. Now remember, when we're talking about 14 and x here, that's the $150 notebooks. Okay, so when you're dealing with a real-life problem like this, set up a linear system. Remember, you're talking about two things. You're talking about the number of whatever objects, and usually you're going to be talking about a cost. Once you set up your linear system, then you can use substitution, which in this case is probably easier than graphing, to find the value of each of your variables.